Good afternoon to my captive audience at home. My captive audience of about 5 people, that is, most of whom I already know. Welcome again to my latest instalment of the self-isolation broadcasts. Okay, so we're on what? I think day 4 today. Yeah, day 4 or 5, who cares, of isolation. And hope you're finding it okay. I hope you're finding it okay off the treadmill and that you're learning to walk for yourself. And maybe you are learning how to structure your own time and how to make best use of your time, be it constructively or just enjoyably. Whichever way you're doing it, good luck to you, and I wish you all the best in these, by definition, isolated, socially restricted, and stimulation limited times. So, that being said, today there's a theme to my little broadcast, and that theme is an expansion or an expanded look at what I mentioned the other day as and cited as one of my loves, passions, pleasures, and such like, which is the subject of poetry. So to begin, I just want to say, first things first, I always struggle to communicate my my love for this, because the word poetry, I think, stirs up in so many people a kind of negative association, maybe, or at worst, or at best, a kind of tepid, room temperature, neutral shrug of the shoulders that people have as a response to the word and to everything that word seems to conjure for them. And I think that comes down to the fact that when we think of poetry, we think of kind of trite, glib, often things like nature poetry and things like that. Well, just to clarify, I have never and have no intention of ever reading or looking at or spending 1 minute of my life on nature poetry or anything like that, or anything of its ilk. The pine wood and the bark of the tree and the sun raining down on the daffodils. Could not care less. Not interested. But poetry, as I hope I'm going to be able to explain a little bit of, is not, is so much greater than that, and than its kind of stereotype. So, that's what I hope to do over the next 10 minutes or so. You've only got to enjoy another 10 minutes of this, if you choose to. And yeah, just to look at what poetry is, what it means to me, and maybe what it could mean to you. Another thing that I wanted to make clear was, you don't have to be a scholar to read or to get into this stuff. I have no background in poetry, no classical education in it, no nothing, just a passion that I developed for this subject through a kind of organic, internally emanating desire to write it when I was in my early 20s, about 10 years ago or more, and to express myself through it. And then following that, obviously, it naturally led on to the fact that I wanted to read it, read others, read what other people have put together. But as I say, I have no classical education, no scholarly knowledge. I couldn't recite Rudyard Kipling's If. I couldn't recite T.S. Eliot's The Wasteland. Even saying that, I couldn't tell you much about T.S. Eliot or Kipling or any of the pantheon of, or the canon of the greats. I couldn't tell you much about them. All you have to do is literally find a poem, open the book, click on the page, whatever it is, and just read. And I call it I have a little system that I call the one-page trick, the one-page magic trick, which is good poetry. Normally, within one page, will give you something profound, give you something to remember, to chew on, to digest, and to cogitate on. And you know what? There are sometimes lines that are so arresting, so profound, so insightful, that they can actually change the way you look at the world, the way you feel about life, your understanding of the world. And, you know, that is surely a gift by anyone's estimation. So, on that being said, I want to move on to really a few little points about the subject. Just a few further points for maybe we look at some quotes and some excerpts from well-known poetry and some of my favourite stuff. So, as I say, it's not exclusive, it's not elitist, and it doesn't belong to the scholars. It belongs to you, and it belongs to me and everybody else. And it's pretty much always free, free at the point of use. So, in these times of, abundant leisure time, why not flock to the page, whether online or print, and just gorge on it just for a little bit and see what you think. And let me know what you think, if you can be bothered, by sharing a comment at the bottom of this page, or whatever, or just telling somebody else. Just do it and see how it feels, see what you think, see if it has any effect, and what's the worst that can happen. So, where do I want to begin? A few quotes about poetry. It was Samuel Johnson who said, "Poetry is the art of uniting pleasure with truth." Poetry is the art of uniting pleasure with truth. So that's something to think about. It's essentially an elegant, beautiful expression of the truth. And I believe it was a philosopher called Rousseau, Thoreau, I believe. Anyway, can't quote me on it, but one of the two, who said that, or discussed the eternal struggle to see what is right in front of our very eyes. And that, I believe, is what poetry offers us. The chance to see what we've always thought about, what we may labour a lifetime to think about, to try and understand, to try and make sense of, and it can be written for us in one eloquent, insightful line. And what's not to love about that? What is not to love about that? Another quote that I love, got it written down here. The crown of literature is poetry. Poetry is the crown of literature. I think that was written by a well-known poet. He's obviously biased on the subject, but I think the saying stands, and there is much truth to that. Poetry is, after all, the most succinct, the most concise form of language that we have, form of expression that we have, and it exists everywhere. It doesn't just exist in textbooks, in anthology books like this, my beloved tome that I showed you the other day, but it exists everywhere. It exists in so many places, in rap music, in advertising, in so much of our culture, of our daily, of the kind of cultural content that we digest every day. It's ubiquitous. It's omnipresent. So yeah, hopefully, if I've done nothing else, I will have succeeded in getting across that this is not some niche, arcane, dry subject that only exists for academics. Far, far from it. It exists to everybody and for everybody. So, moving on a little bit. There's a quote here that I want to read that is written in poetry and written about poetry and about expression. And it's from a poetic essay called The Essay on Criticism, or An Essay on Criticism. And it is written by Alexander Pope, very esteemed poet and writer. And he says in this criticism, excuse me, but true expression, like the unchanging sun, clears and improves whatever it shines upon. It gilds all objects, but it alters none. So there we have a beautiful sentiment, talking about true expression, like the unchanging sun, clears and improves whatever that expression shines upon. And it gilds, i.e. Varnishes all objects, or by objects, I'm presuming he means the items of content that the poem touches or that the expression touches. It gilds all these objects, but it alters none. So a true expression is a perfectly accurate representation of whatever it's talking about. And that, I think, is what he's saying. But again, you have the truth of what he says allied to the beauty of the way he says it. And that is majestic, in my opinion, my humble opinion. So we have many such examples of eloquence throughout this tome, as I'm sure you can imagine. Starting with the, obviously, with the doyen, the godfather, the granddaddy of all literary endeavour, which is obviously, as I've said in the previous two broadcasts, William Shakespeare. And his sonnets, like everything else he wrote, are breathtaking in their scope, in their insight, their blistering, searing insight, that is so illuminating, and also in their sheer degree of their eloquence. So we have the Shakespearean sonnets at the beginning, and what I really need here, by the way, is those little pieces of paper that you use as an appendix, as a way of seeing the quotes that you've highlighted. But I haven't got one, so just bear with me. Can't find it, so I've got another one here for us. This is a poem, a poem and a lyrical, or the lyrics of a poem, a song by the great Bob Dylan, who I think was voted in the 20th century to be most influential poet of the 20th century or something. So obviously somebody of great poetic merit and ability. And this song is called "It's All Right Ma, I'm Only Bleeding." So if we have a little further look at some of the lines within this startlingly startlingly profound and insightful and acute poetry that we have here. So the poem goes like this, and bear with me because it's a little lengthy, but I think you'll agree it's worth persisting with. The poem goes: darkness at the break of noon, shadows even the silver spoon, the handmade blade, the child's balloon, eclipses both the sun and moon. To understand you know too soon, there is no sense in trying. Pointed threats they bluff with scorn, suicide remarks are torn. From the fool's gold mouthpiece the hollow horn plays wasted words, proves to warn that he not busy being born is busy dying. Temptation's page flies out the door, you follow, find yourself at war, watch waterfalls of pity roar. You feel to moan, but unlike before, you discover that you'd just be one more person crying. So don't fear if you hear a foreign sound to your ear. It's alright, ma, I'm only sighing. As some won victory, some downfall, private reasons, great or small, can be seen in the eyes of those that call to make all that should be killed to crawl, while others say don't take nothing at all, except hatred. Disillusioned words like bullets bark, as human gods aim for their mark, made everything from toy guns that spark to flesh-coloured Christ that glow in the dark. It's easy to see without looking too far that not much is really sacred. While preachers preach of evil fate, teachers teach that knowledge waits, can lead to $100 plates, goodness hides behind its gates. But even the President of the United States sometimes must have to stand naked. Might want to remove that image from your mind. And though the rules of the road have been lodged, it's only people's games that you got to dodge. And it's alright, ma, I can make it. And then listen to this little stanza that I think is potentially, as a cultural commentary, is just unparalleled in its insight. Advertising signs that con you into thinking you're the one that can do what's never been done, that can win what's never been won. Meantime, life goes on all around you. I'll read that again. Advertising signs that con you into thinking you're the one that can do what's never been done, that can win what's never been won. Meantime, life goes on all around you. I think that should be written on every wall in every house up and down the land. It's such as it's the gravity of its insight and the weight of its meaning, and how much it could literally inform a generation who've been brought up on fame, the notion of fame, the notion of stardom, and the notion of achieving recognition as being something to make your life's work. So that little stanza, I think, stands alone as a triumph of Dylan's poetry. It continues. There's not too much left, but I'll just persist for a little bit longer. You lose yourself, you reappear. You suddenly find you got nothing to fear. Alone you stand with nobody near, when a trembling distant voice unclear startles your sleeping ears to hear that somebody thinks they really found you. A question in your nerves is lit, yet you know there is no answer fit to satisfy, ensure you not to quit, to keep it in your mind and not forget that it is not he or she or them or it that you belong to. Although the masters make the rules for the wise men and the fools, I got nothing, ma, to live up to. For them that must obey authority, that they do not respect in any degree, who despise their jobs, their destinies, speak jealously of them that are free, do what they do to just be nothing more than something they invest in, while some on principles baptised to strictly party platform ties, social clubs in drag disguise, outsiders they can freely criticise, tell nothing except who to idolise, and then say, God bless him. While one who sings with his tongue on fire, gargles in the rat race choir, bent out of shape from society's pliers, cares not to come up any higher. but rather get you down in the hole that he's in. But I mean no harm nor put fault on anyone that lives in a vault. But it's all right, ma, if I can't please him. Old lady judges watch people in pairs, limited in sex they dare to push fake morals, insult and stare, while money doesn't talk, it swears. Obscenity, who really cares? Propaganda, all is phony. While them that defend what they cannot see with a killer's pride, security, it blows the minds most bitterly. For them that think death's honesty won't fall upon them naturally. Life sometimes must get lonely. My eyes collide head on with stuffed graveyards, false gods I scuff at pettiness which plays so rough. Walk upside down inside handcuffs, kick my legs to crash it off. Say okay, I've had enough. What else can you show me? And if my thought dreams could be seen, they'd probably put my head in a guillotine. But it's all right, ma. It's life and life only. So there we have it. A little reading for today by the great Bob Dylan. And that line at the end, I think, is worthy of further examination. It's life and life only. Is the majesty of that line. It's life and life only. So something for you to examine, to think about. That all that takes place in this mortal coil is simply life and life only. Tying in nicely, I think, with the quote we had the other day back from Oscar Wilde: "Life is too important to be taken seriously." So something worthy of examination there. Something to hold on to. Something to change your perspective and keep life and yourself right-sized. So I'll leave you with that. And yeah, life is too important to be taken seriously. Over and over again. Recite. And so is this little broadcast that I'm doing. Far too important to be taken seriously. But I'll leave it there for today. I think that's all that I want to say on the subject for now. But yeah, it's like opening the door to Narnia. And hopefully maybe I've just turned the key just that little bit in the door. And now you can open it and walk into to the Narnia that is poetry, the land of Narnia. So I hope you enjoy. And maybe if just one person opens up a book, goes online and reads a verse, a stanza, a couplet, or any other mode of poetry, then these last 20 odd minutes have been worthwhile. So I'll leave that with you, and enjoy the rest of your isolated day.